Now, I want to talk about from a sports standpoint, and we've talked about Blaney and all this stuff, and we think back to the couple of qualifying sessions a few weeks ago where you were very animated. And I'm not saying that to joke at. I'm saying is that there's a theory that had not as much to do with what exactly happened to you on the track, but more about the optics of our sport, because the sport means a lot to you and how we are perceived, and that, like, you heard boos and it affected you more. Is that true or false?
Oh, I think I'm very passionate about that. I love the opportunity that I've been given. Think a lot of it. I think a lot of the people that helped me get established, in this sport that has meant so much to me. I'm aware. I don't need anybody to I guess, form their opinion. I know in my heart that I'm aware of the pride that I have of being a part of this sport, and I do love it. It did bother me when I got out. I've never, ever seen anybody boo, and it wasn't booing Kyle Busch or Jeff Gordon because, of a scenario. They booed us.
All of you.
Yeah, and that bummed me out, and it kind of fired you up. But, I think as a sanctioning body, you're answering to so many different people. The fans, it's no different than the drivers. We have those driver meetings, and they get in there. They kind of break us up anymore. And at first I'm like, man, the communication you talk about one conversation in one meeting and you don't in the next. That's dangerous. But I've put us all together before, and I've seen them put us all together before. And everybody has so many different opinions that you can't get, anything accomplished. I think the dialogue is definitely there across the board. Sometimes you feel like you're heard. And sometimes you're not, but hey, I get it. I think Jim France being there, he sat next to me in those meetings and that we had just this last weekend in Richmond. I think having the guy there, having somebody there that's capable of making that decision and wrong, right, or indifferent, pull the trigger. You know what I mean? I think that's the world we live in right now. And if it doesn't work, drop back and punt. I commend them for trying, the qualifying thing. I think on paper, it looks really good. We all watch that in Daytona every year, and man, that's exciting, but you can't duplicate that on a 1.5-mile track. You can't put a car, in a scenario where the first car out is at a deficit. You're going to do whatever you can do to maximize the opportunity to try to be that last car because that's your best opportunity. That's not a realistic thing. It doesn't matter if it's, some people say, well, just put 4 of them out there. Well, you can't do that. You're still going to fight over being the last car. The last car is the fastest car. You can't have that. And I guess for me, I think it's always important not to just put the complaint in. You better have, if you're going to complain, have an idea. You know what I mean? I don't like people that just come up with something and say that sucks, and walk off. Give me an idea, you know what I mean? And whether they listen or not or whatever, that's what my point was when I talked to, I didn't air, anything, displeasure, anything on other than my interview, my rant, but I didn't say anything, about the situation, on anyone in particular. I called Steve O'Donnell and described my weekend, how that came to fruition on that qualifying event. I unloaded, I wasn't fast enough. We weren't good enough in qualifying trim, put our car in race trim, knowing that I needed to draft. I got out there, and when Newman got up there and got me stuck in the middle, I was like, well, they're going to call me sitting here, so I got to go. Well, lo and behold, guess what? I went out there by myself, and guess what? I wasn't fast enough, qualified 25th. I said, I'm telling you, no smoke and mirrors, that's what happened. That's how I got there, and I wasn't fast enough, and that's why I was frustrated. But, to the point when I called him, I was like, hey, man, we have dirt late models that race all across the country. Sometimes you go to races and they pill draw. The guy that sits on the pole pill draws and inverts the top 6 rows. Maybe do something like that. You know what I mean? I had at least have some ideas in the idea jar too, not just the complaint jar. To heat races. That I know that ain't a popular opinion. I was a guy that went in there this week and said, hey, we're talking about Gen 7 cars and all this stuff. Show me on that list all these things that we're doing. What's going to make these things wreck? You're like, wow. What did you just say? Everybody turned around. The driver's like, what the hell? What do you mean? I'm like, that's what's going to – we got to figure out how to have some cautions and have these cars, crashing every now and then. I get it. We don't need to hurt anybody. It doesn't need to be dangerous. But when I go to a race, I know back in the day when we didn't talk about qualifying, we just showed up and watched. How many times pre-06 did you see a car crash, just flat out bust their butt all on their own in qualifying trim all by themselves? How many times that happened?
Every week, maybe.
Almost every week. You arguably can't crash these cars.
Well, you can go to certain racetracks and see it multiple times. You go to Texas and stuff and see it multiple times because of the track being so treacherous. I agree. I think there's been a little chatter on social media about how there's nobody spinning out. The cars are completely stable. You were talking about ideas for qualifying. You mentioned heat races, pill draws. What would be your idea going to if you had to go the mile and a half? If you had to go to Texas tomorrow, what would you do?
I would probably, if I had to fix this, if it was mine to try to say it, and I'm not sold that it needs fixed.
Yeah.
I think Bristol the other night, all I talked about, I did interviews last week, and the only thing I talked about was the empty grandstands. I don't want to talk about the empty grandstands. I want to talk about the damn race. That was a good race. That was the best race that I had been in probably six years at that Bristol track. They finally found a good combination with the traction compound that they had. It was there by the end of the race. I was past a lot of cars on the bottom, moved some cars. There was some carnage. There was some good racing side by side. That was good atmosphere. I mean, if a fan didn't like what they saw there, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? I don't know that it can get a whole lot better. You don't have the anticipation of watching a car hold up 6-7 cars and knowing, hey, buddy, don't go get that beer. He's fixing to wreck him. I mean, I get that.
Right.
That was real, and I understand that. But I'm telling you, that's the first time in a long time I've been in the car and you're working your ass off and you're like, man, this is good racing. But what'd you ask?
What would you
what would I do to fix it? The first, I think if you went back on a timetable, when we put the cars on the ground, went to the no ride height rule, I think that was a step. I hate to say it, the horsepower was a step. I get that we need to be enticing to the manufacturers, the OEMs. If they need less horsepower to make that attractive to somebody else, let's figure it out. But I also think as we've graduated through, down the lines and evolved with side force and all the things that we've learned, having them things down on the ground and figuring out the underbodies and all the downforce that we've found in the underbody and then that side force. You take the side force off these things with no blade on the back of them, you're not going to be hung out. And when that thing goes sideways, guess what? She's gone.
Yeah.
You look at all these old cars on the wall and stuff like that, they weren't all branched out and when you look at our cars, they all look like a dually fender on the left side and they're straight as a board on the right side. I mean, that's a wedge body late model on the back of it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what our late models look like. I think you take some of those things away. The other thing, the quick fix, if I had to fix short track racing and if the goal was in fact to create some cautions, how many times back in the day, not meaning to at all, you'd roll into turn one at Richmond, get into somebody and wreck them. Happened all the time. Yeah. The bumpers are lined up in a way right now where it almost aids the car. Really? You might flip them off out the window, but you ought to throw them the peace sign too because it just catapulted you past whoever you were trying to pass door to door. You used to get in a corner too hard. Maybe he checked up for somebody in front of him and you took their rear tires 5 inches off the ground, they're spun out, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my God, I just wrecked 12 cars. Dude, I got nothing. I'll try to call him Monday. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. I mean, literally did not mean it. Had no intention I wasn't pissed at him. He didn't do me wrong. I got into him and spun him out.